Do you think that this is going to give Team Canada some momentum going into the next game against Czechia? And what are you expecting there?
So a tougher road for Canada, because I think Czechia is the toughest opponent they could have faced in the quarterfinal based on the seeding. And I think Czechia has shown well in this tournament. Jiri Kulich, standout, who's a Buffalo Sabres prospect. He has 4 goals in the tournament for Czechia, 7 points. And he's also the all-time leading scorer for Czechia at the World Juniors. So Canada has a tough matchup here in the quarterfinals. Actually, I would say a potential upset candidate for Czechia. So Canada can't take them lightly. I think they learned a tough lesson against Sweden, as I said. They learned a tough lesson here early on against Germany. So hopefully these are stepping stones for Canada to really realize the adversity and realize the tough opponents in this tournament. So I think we saw the positive steps from Celebrini and the positive steps from the chemistry of this team in this game, because I think that's been the conversation for a lot of this tournament so far. In past teams for Canada, the chemistry has come sooner. But I think being in Europe, being in tougher circumstances for Canada, they've really had to come together as this tournament's moved forward. So I think the adversity could help Canada. And I think if they do get a big win against Czechia, I think this could help them in the long haul and potentially go for another gold this tournament.
John Viveiros, host of Hot Take Hockey. Oh, John, my goodness, one of the players saying it's like it's the end of the world. Such a crushing blow to Team Canada. How did this all go down today?
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was a frustrating one. I think you talk about frustrating circumstances for Canada and being in Sweden. And of course, next year we'll be in Ottawa, but it was a tough situation for Canada. I think going in, a lot of people felt this was a weaker team than past, and especially following up on last year's Connor Bedard-led team. I think you go into this quarterfinal, and I said it on my last segment that I thought Czechia was an upset candidate here, and they shouldn't really be considered an upset candidate. I think if you look at the roster, Jakob Stancil, who was a 4th-round pick last year for the St. Louis Blues in the 2023 draft, scored 2 goals, taking part in crushing Canada's spirits here. I think Canada was very slow, especially following up on the Sweden loss and a tougher opponent in Germany in that game. But I thought it was a slow start coming in a quarterfinal where you really could turn things around in this tournament. Obviously, as you said, they had a better second half, but it was disappointing to see some of the stars not come big in that third period and potentially score that winning goal, and just even tougher seeing that goal against with 11 seconds left on the clock.
And is it anything, do you think there's something here between Team Canada and Czechia, like when these two teams meet up, that it just becomes a real challenge for Canada?
Yeah, you look at last year, I mean, it was a tough matchup in the gold medal game, and Canada didn't win until overtime, of course. This is tough. I think Canada facing some of these European teams, especially Czechia, it's been tough for Canada to read. I'm not sure if that's lack of scouting from the management and not being able to see some of these players because all of them are, for the most part, overseas. And it's even tougher, I think, because this is the first time since 2019 that Canada won't medal in the World Juniors since they lost in the quarterfinals in 2019 versus Finland. So specifically against Czechia, I'm not sure if it's lack of access to tape or just certain players, but Czechia did have a couple standouts, as I've mentioned in the past. Jiri Kulich, who's a Sabres prospect, a couple guys in the OHL. So it's disappointing to see the struggle and to see that slow start. And I'm not sure if it's specifically because of Czechia, but it did show pretty clearly in this game.
Now, looking ahead to the semis and the final, who do you think we'll see?
Well, the U.S. just had a very dominant victory over Latvia, and I think that's the team to watch out for. I think going into the tournament, it was U.S., Canada talked about quite a bit. I also think Sweden shouldn't be overlooked. They are the home team. They have the home crowd behind them, and that showed very clearly in their 2-0 victory over Canada early in the tournament. So I would see maybe a Sweden-USA gold medal matchup and potentially U.S. taking it if they can overcome that home crowd for Sweden.
All right, John Viveiros, host of Hot Take Hockey. Thanks for giving us your take. Take care.
Thank you so much. So thank you to CTV for having me on. I just wanted to add a few things because it's hard to remember everything while you're doing live TV and include everything you want to talk about, especially when it's in a shorter segment. But talking about snubs for Canada, and I think it's easy when Canada gets eliminated like this to talk about the snubs, but I thought there was a few guys for Canada that probably underperformed in a big way. I mean, Fraser Minton being the captain, I think he probably expected a lot more from himself. Matthew Poitras being sent down, or being, I guess, not really sent down, but sent to Canada's World Juniors to hopefully win a gold medal. So you talk about guys that had NHL experience, and I probably should have talked about that in the segment, but it was like Matthew Poitras, Fraser Minton. I don't really want to be negative on these guys because they have the NHL experience. They went to the World Juniors. Like, this should all be seen as positive steps to their development. But unfortunately, in this tournament, in this instance, they didn't show too well. So there were certain guys, then maybe guys that in the bottom 6 that just didn't have the production that some of these names have, like a David Goyette, or unfortunately for Colby Barlow, he was actually injured. So I included that further down, that Barlow was injured this year prior to the selection process for Canada. But there were certain circumstances. I mean, Benson and Korchinski, had they gotten the call, but Buffalo and Chicago respectively wanted to keep those guys. So it's tough, right? It's tough. I think overall, at the end of the day, it happens. Czechia should have been seen as a stronger opponent for them. I mean, at the end of the day, they started really slow after 2 games, as I said on the segment. Why are you starting slow after a weak game against Sweden and you started slow against Germany? Why was it the case again when you had a couple days off? I just don't get it. But unfortunately for Canada, they're done in the tournament. And I just wanted to go over this and just give a little recap. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, shout out to my guy, Nick Lardis. He should be on the team next year. Colby Barlow, if he's healthy and he's not playing pro, he should be on the team next year. And there's a bunch of other names. But you would imagine Macklin Celebrini, if he gets drafted first overall, which it's looking like that's the solid case, he might just be on the NHL team next year. So if he's not, then maybe he gets the call, but I think he's likely playing NHL hockey next year. So give me your thoughts, guys, on the Canadian World Juniors early exit here from the quarterfinals, and what else you think about the prospects and the teams in the tournament as I record this video. All right, talk soon. Thank you so much for the support as always.